All right, good morning, everybody. Today we're going to discuss the Collins management transition process. Um, I generally am the one that does the marketing with various associations, and when I get to the point where I have a verbal confirmation from the board that they are going to indeed hire us, that's when, and I may not have a contract yet, and I may not have the setup forms yet, but I am adequately comfortable that we are going to indeed take over that association. I sent an email out to the Novas, to the accounting staff, to whichever manager is going to be assigned to that account. If I know who's going to be the assistant manager, I include them as well. I include Bill and generally members of the project management team as well, so that they're also aware that a new account is coming online. In that email, I title it always onboarding and then the full name of the association. Um, Generally, almost always there is a 1 month overlap with the outgoing management firm if they currently have a management firm. Most times they do. Sometimes we take over a self-managed association. And so the way we get associations to agree to that is that we don't charge for that first month. And that overlap month is really critical to ensure a smooth transition. It gives us enough time. We're under contract, so we're protected. We have the indemnification clause and whatnot. But we have enough time to reach out to the outgoing management company, get the documents that we need immediately, and have an orderly transition. So again, I send out that onboarding such and such association. And it's going to have details such as what the overlap month is, when we take over full management, who the manager is going to be, who the assistant manager is going to be if we know, how many units is in this association, what the setup fee is, and usually it's around $20 or $10 per unit. That's to cover our cost to actually manually enter in their contact information. I include the base fee, how frequent their board meetings are, and whether they're in person or virtual. And I include how frequent the on-site inspections are. Usually they're monthly, sometimes less. In very rare occasions, they may be more often than monthly. And any other pertinent details that I think are necessary, such as I'll let Savannah know if they have already told me that they want the web portal, if they're already a member of Echo, just things that we need for the overall setup. My default assumption is that they do want the web portal. So we usually just, even if they haven't agreed to it, I just set it up and they can always change their mind later. But I don't want to get into a big back and forth about the merits of the web portal. I assume just get it out there, get it running, and if they want to push back some point in the future, we can have that conversation. But I'd rather have that conversation reactively instead of proactively, because each proactive conversation is going to take an hour of my time, and a reactive conversation may be significantly less. So in that, I'll save time by being reactive. And then I send that out to everybody I already mentioned. If I already have the set of forms, I will attach that. If I already have the contract, I will attach that as well. They will also be saved on the server. The contract will be saved on the Y drive under management agreements. I generally don't save the signed setup forms. I leave that for the accounting staff to do. The setup forms have 3 documents. They have the Alliance Bank signature card, and they have the strong room signature card, and they have the PG&E authorization form. So we need all 3 of those documents to get started. The management contract, generally that's signed by DocuSign, but the other forms still require wet signatures. So usually they take a little bit longer to get those back in. Generally on the first day, sometimes Sue will do it a few days later. There is a risk in reaching out to the outgoing management company too quickly, because they may not know that we're taking over. So I'll try to do a better job in the future of specifying if we need to wait till the startup date I like to send out these onboarding emails as early as possible. But sometimes I send them out too early, and Sue may reach out, and it may be news to them that we're taking over the management of that association. I oftentimes will send a template to to the board, a template termination letter, or sometimes they'll just write their own. Sometimes they'll have their legal counsel do it. But pretty soon thereafter, I send that onboarding email. Sue will reach out to the management company. That onboarding email also has the outgoing management company. Sue will reach out to that management company and kind of say, "Hey, people, these are what we need. This is what we need right up front to get started." And Sue, at this point, I'll go ahead and pass the baton to you so you can describe what that initial communication includes.
Okay. Um, yeah, basically, I send a quite a form letter that goes to them in their email. A lot of times, I actually know the crew or the other management company that is um, turning over the documents. So I'm pretty friendly with some of the people. So I just ask them for everything in electronic format. Excuse me. And I try to get everything as soon as possible, even though I know that it's a lot to expect. But for the most part, I would say a good 85% of the time. Yeah. They're pretty good about turning over documents right away, and I try to make it easy. I set up a Dropbox link for them. They can drop things in the Dropbox, like Melissa from Bay Area Service or BAPS, Bay Area Property Service, has been dropping documents in the Dropbox all last week, and so that makes it easy. I also ask them for a strong room link. So if they're using strong room, and I think Paul has mentioned before that we have sort of, led the community to do that. I don't think anyone was using strong room before us. If anybody, it wasn't that many. But now it makes it really easy because we can just ask strong room for a link. They send us a link of all of the invoices, all of the transactions, and it's really convenient. And I'm able to download that entire list and all of those invoices and put them in the Z drive. I create a file in the Z drive for the property, and I create a transition file, which also includes two folders, or sorry, yeah, two, one for onboarding and one for utility invoices, because we have to get those and set those up really quick. So for the most part, I ask them for all that information. They're really good about sending it back. We get back I try to get everything electronically if possible, and they're pretty good about it. So we get that back. Savannah gets the roster. We decide what the unit code numbers are, and then Savannah sets up that spreadsheet, and we have that a spreadsheet that very particular spreadsheet that we upload to Condo Manager, and Condo Manager then creates a database, and that's kind of it. And then from there, I log everything into the um, transaction sheet that's on Google Drive. Cheska, do you have access to that? I'm wondering if you do. I think everybody does, but you maybe. I'll share that with you. Um, and it's a management transfer checklist. So it basically kind of delineates everybody's little job that they have to do to onboard a property. And, you know, b- and then so what happens from there is I try to get everything as, you know, humanly possible from the other company. Some of them drag their feet, but that's where we keep a list of what we've done and what we've collected. And then there's a lot of follow up, because a lot of times when we're doing this, we don't always get the financials that we need and the things that we need. And usually Lonnie will say, I need this, I need that, I need this. And then I'll go back and ask them for whatever else, because obviously they don't have the same formats and um, you know, processes that we do. So things are different. So I may have to go back and ask for a different report or something like that. But that's pretty much it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll I'll actually share that with you right now.
the way this is it's a little bit different with Captain's Cove. We actually don't have an overlap month with that association because we're not doing the financial management, so it's not as necessary. But we're kind of acting as though we do have a transition month in that we've already reached out to the outgoing management company. We started setting up the database. So to set up the database, Sue first emails condo manager and says, "Hey, this is the name of the association. Please set this up." And then they set up that association and condo manager, and then enter in, like she said, all the contact information that we have, email addresses, everything into an Excel spreadsheet, which gets imported into condo manager, and then voila, we have our database. The new process, the new procedure for setting up the file structure, because Sue is, like she said, requesting all these documents. The new procedure is to use the structure that we created for the Z Drive for new associations, and then use that as the structure for every association that we onboard. Managers have the option of using that structure for existing accounts if they want, but we're not forcing them to. But for new accounts, by default, we're using the best practices file directory system that was created recently.
I'm having Angela work on that, so please accept my apologies for not doing that sooner. Just got over budget, so but we'll get that started. We'll get that on.
Was
Yeah, I
that
just want to into the
The
procedure.
file structure.
was that finalized? I thought Christine was still working on. Okay,
There was one for the property files
for the
for the
property
Z drive.
files.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, so during the first week of the overlap month, the manager's job is to update the introduction newsletter, and it's generally people look for that in the most recent association that we took over. That's probably where you're going to find the most up to date template. It's in Microsoft Publisher, and it just gives the basic details of what to expect with the transition. First, it introduces Collins management, says this is your manager, gives some details about the manager, lets them know how to pay their dues, what our role is, and all the basic stuff that they need. Again, this is going to be a little bit different for an association that we don't do the accounting, because in that situation, we're going to specify, hey, we're not doing the accounting. That is still being handled by the outgoing, the existing accounting firm. And then any information that they need with respect to that, we would provide. If there's a web portal, we may remind them how to get to the web portal so that they don't think it's through us, and other important details. We send that introduction letter to the board in draft form. We don't just send it out. The reason for that is because the transition is important. This is an important part in our process. You never get a second chance for first impression. So we don't want to mess up the transition. We don't want to embarrass our new client. That's the last thing we want to do. So we tread very carefully during the transition. We send them the introductory letter and say, hey, we don't want to send this out until you've had a chance to review it. Please, and give them a deadline. Usually, we want to give them, the remainder of the week. If you get it to them on a Monday, get them to like Thursday or Friday to give any feedback. Generally, it's not a lot of feedback, but they may have, they may want us to add something, reword something a little bit, which is just fine.
I would like to add one little thing before we send it to the board, always have Susan eagle-eye it.
Yeah, in fact, anything that's going to be sent out in mass, it's always a really good idea to have Susan Nelson eagle-eye it. It's pretty much company policy. I always have her eagle-eye things before I send it out to a lot of people, because if you're sending out to 100 units, and you could be you'll have egg on your face with everybody. So anybody that reads it. So we try to be very careful about what we send out. Again, it's for making sure that we don't embarrass ourselves or our clients, because that will diminish our credibility and make things more difficult going forward, because we've already eliminated a component of trust. So we want to avoid that. So In the background, Lonnie and the accounting staff, they are setting up strong room. Bill sets up strong room, I believe, and Lonnie will set up the operations and reserve account at Alliance Bank using the signature card that I would have already provided her. She will set up the lockbox account so that when the homeowner starts sitting in their dues, it'll go to the right place. Sue, generally, what is the current procedure for notifying vendors?
Jenny notifies all the vendors. So we get that list from the previous management company. She emails and calls vendors and notifies them of address changes, except for the utility bills, in which case, or I'm sorry, please forgive me, except for PG&E, because Bill does that when Bill sets up PG&E bills. But otherwise, she sets up all of the address changes.
Yeah, and it's
And we're
important to let
also
them know.
training Angela to do that as well. So we have a second person doing that.
Okay.
And when she reaches out to the vendors, does she also get them the information to go through, what is it, the ERC?
Correct.
She gives that as well.
Correct.
And also how to send invoices. The invoices get sent to invoices@collins-mgt.com, and that automatically forwards them to Strong Room. Again, the need for the transition month gives us time to do all this, but at the same time, vendors are still getting paid with the outgoing management firm, and also if homeowners pay, during the beginning of the month, during that overlap month, it'll go to the outgoing management company. Because remember, the outgoing management company, they need to close their books at the end of the month. So during that first month with us, we're already setting up the database. We're setting up the basic account structures. We're probably doing a site inspection. The manager is probably reaching out to the board and saying, "Hey, I'm going to, take a look at the property, invite them to come with you, so that they can, kind of give you their perspective on what's important and what's not." Some managers like to invite, like if it's an association that's, has a lot of landscaping, they might invite the landscaper or a representative from the landscaping company. If there's a major construction project going on, they may invite the construction manager. It's really up to the manager to decide, but there should be some initial walkthrough. Also recommend reaching out to the key vendors, just having a little conversation. Even if they're not in the walkthrough, just calling the landscaper and kind of getting a feel for what they perceive as important issues. Then there's not a whole lot of things that the board needs to do during that overlap month. They do need to sign some documents and answer some questions here or there. In the rare occasion that we have trouble getting responsiveness from the outgoing management company, we may need them to intervene, but that's pretty rare. There's a couple of management companies that are problematic in that regard, but they're few and far between. In general, we have a pretty good rapport with outgoing management companies. It's our policy to always be super friendly, professional with the other management companies at all times. We never, there may be feelings of sour grapes or anything like that. We do not want to exacerbate that. We want to make sure that we deal with them with the utmost respect, because it's going to make things just better for everybody. And there's no reason to create animosity with other management companies. It does not help us at all.
I also do that in the reverse when we're offboarding properties. I'm the same way, just very, very kind and respectful, because I get it.
Generally, the management company is going to close their books, maybe the first or second week of the month after we are the loan management company. So not during the overlap. It's after the overlap, but they have to wait for bank statements and all of that. They're going to close out their books. They're going to send the final financials to us. And this is if we're doing the accounting. If it's in the middle of the year, the fiscal year, then the ending numbers on their final financial statement become our beginning numbers. So year to date for landscaping is 30,000, then we're going to start with 30,000 and just go from there. If it's the beginning of the fiscal year, and obviously everything starts at zero, at least with respect to revenue and expenses. Then we'll just use the financials to know, what bank accounts we have and other things like the balance sheet. A lot of that transfers over because we want to start where they left off. And then we're off to the races. We basically just take it on where they left off, and then we need to know when their board meetings are so that it can be entered onto the calendar, so that the accounting staff knows when they need to get the financial statements. Sometimes that first financial statement there will be a delay, it may be a little bit late because again we're waiting for the outgoing management company to finish up. We need to start up, so maybe that first financial is a little late. Maybe we have to bring it in person to the first board meeting. But in general, it's not a problem. And if it is late, it's not late by much. By then, strong room's already set up. There will be some percentage of homeowners that will be confused about the process. Maybe they missed the transition newsletter or what have you. Maybe they send their dues to the wrong bank. That happens, but the accounting staff, they know to expect that. I think for the first 2 months they don't assess any late fees. So if there is a little bit of confusion, it'll get all figured out. Homeowners will, the worst case scenario is that a homeowner will get a late letter from us. We don't send statement. In most cases, we do not send statements to every homeowner every month. Okay, what we do is, or Savannah, during that overlap month, usually during the second week, she orders coupon books to the homeowners. So the homeowners will use a coupon book every month, send in their payment, and if they're late, and only if they're late, will they receive a statement from us with a coupon saying, "Hey, you've missed a payment." So if a homeowner makes a payment to the previous management company's lockbox, they're going to get that late letter, and they're going to say, "What's this? I've already paid." And then they'll call us, and the Novas will probably take that call, and they'll say, "Oh, you're a new association. You probably maybe sent to the other bank," and they'll figure it out. If they need to kick it up to the accounting staff, they will, but it'll get fixed, and the accounting staff will reach out to the previous bank, make sure that the homeowner is indeed correct, that it was sent there, and they just credit the account. The money's going to be there when we get the funds from the outgoing management company. The money will be there. In most cases, the way we get the funds is via check. Isn't that correct, Sue? That it's actual paper.
That is correct. I asked them to send a check here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sometimes we need maybe not the full amount, maybe a certain amount, just to make sure that we can cover expenses and they don't have a negative balance. And then after the books are closed, we'll get another check for the full amount.
Right. Lonnie asked me to ask them for 50% of each the operations and reserves.
Okay. So some other important things that we need to know about. We do need to make sure that all the funds that show up on the balance sheet are accounted for. So if there are any funds in outside banks or anything like that, we get our hands on those bank signature cards. Sometimes there's a little bit of cleanup that's needed, where we have to get new bank signature cards because there's been turnover on the board and things like that. There's a lot of little issues that may come up. Shortly after the end of the overlap month, we send somebody out to get all the boxes. And the boxes are, there could be 5, 20, 25, 30. We never know. It really depends on the retention policy of the board. We have taken on a new procedure where I add the retention policy to our basic management agreement. And and I have the board sign it during the signature process, and it specifies what we'll keep, what will be archived, what we'll keep in the office, digitized, and what will be destroyed. And this retention policy has been reviewed by a lot of attorneys for a lot of associations, and they all seem to agree that it's a solid policy. I got it straight from davidstone.com. So we have that, and all these boxes show up at Hercules. And then we go through them. Anything that's important on a day-to-day basis, we will scan and digitize and add to the server. Anything else, anything that is just superfluous and not needed anymore, will be shredded or destroyed. And then everything else will be put in boxes and brought to the storage facility by Susan Nelson and whoever else she gets to help her with that. And that is the transition process. Again, important milestones is getting the contract signed, setup form signed, the onboarding email, to sets up a to-do list spreadsheet with everybody's tasks and who does what. She reaches out to the outgoing management company, tells them what she needs immediately. We contact condo manager, set the database, import all the information. The intro newsletters created. It's email blasted and emailed. Soon thereafter, Sue orders the coupon books, and those get sent out to everybody. If by chance, because in the intro newsletter, we do offer people ACH. If there's a time lag between that newsletter going out and we are able to get people signed up for ACH, because their old ACH is going to be canceled. So we need to set up with a new ACH. And we try to get as many people as possible to sign up for ACH. Those people do not need the coupon books. So usually the first year we send out the coupon books to mostly everybody. By the time we get to the second year, about half the homeowners will be on ACH. They won't even get a coupon book. Or if they contact us, which we ask them to do, and they say, "Hey, I don't need a coupon book. I want to save the association $6." Then because I use online bill pay or what have you, then we don't send them coupon books either. But if you're on ACH, we just take you off there altogether. So trying to save our clients some money. And then, but again, the first go around, most people do get those coupon books, and then they only get late letters or late notices if they're late. And this, on net, saves them more money. We send everybody a coupon every month. It would be much more expensive for the association than just sending the coupon books to just those who need them once per year. So that's the transition process in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions or anything that you would like for me to add or expound upon?
I do.
Okay.
You want to go first, Jessica?
Go ahead.
So my first question, you had mentioned that the boxes that are picked up from prior management are taken to Hercules and scanned and saved. Who's responsible for determining what should be scanned and saved on the files and what should just go to archives?
So,
Well, typically what's happened is the manager goes through the files. There's usually, if it's usually pretty obvious that they're old files. So, if it says 2007, we go through it and we know this is a really old file, so we may end up shredding that. But for the most part, the manager will take a look at the current box. There's usually a current box that has keys and other items in it that Susan Nelson will actually file and keep a log of. And then after that has been looked at, we scan whatever's appropriate to scan, and then anything that we want to keep goes to storage, and then we may separate the rest and send them to the shredder. So it just
So that's
depends
all
on
on the
what.
So that's all on the manager. So for like Captain's Cove, Jessica would be responsible to drive to Hercules, go through all the boxes and make that judgment call.
Well,
I actually spoke with Sarah recently. Sarah with CPS, and I think she's local, so I'd be happy to go grab the boxes, sort through them, and then bring them to Hercules. But I understand that all the unit files are hard copy. So is that something we usually digitize?
I would go through them and see if there's anything, whatever is in there that should be digitized.
Yeah.
Keep, and then anything that usually we digitize architectural requests,
right.
Anything that could be important in the future,
Like legal, anything legal.
anything legal, maybe any pending violation letters, anything that looks like it could be important. Everything else can generally be archived. We actually went through this entire process for all of our associations, and we did this. So it kind of would be a similar thing that we did internally. And I think with the scenario that you described, you can go pick up the boxes and go through them, and then we can, I don't think you necessarily need to come bring them out to us unless you wanted to make the trip. We could probably send out Donovan or something like that to come get them. What was I going to say? Oh, generally, I think management companies more and more, they provide us a lot of files digitized already. I think it's happening more and more. So I would encourage you to get, even if at some point, ask them for everything that they have. So they may have unit files already, because everybody, you write a violation letter in Word or what have you. You're generally going to save that template into a owner file that you created. And I think it'd be great if we get our hands on all that to the extent that people are willing to share that.
I would say typically lately, for sure, I either get a thumb drive with everything on it, or they drop it into a Dropbox, and I get the whole file structure. So this almost very similar to ours. Minutes, budgets, whatever, the same file structure, and then I just download that into the Z drive. So.
Hey,
for
Sue.
this particular, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
For
Sue. Go ahead, Melanie.
So I know for this particular management company, they're paper-based, and I've onboarded lots of their communities, and you'll get at least a dozen boxes, sometimes up to 40 boxes, depending on how long they've managed the community. So I think some of the management companies are electronic, but I know for sure this one is not.
Yeah. Well, it may very well be that we need a whole. If they send us 40 boxes, we don't want 40 boxes. That's going to take up a ton of storage space, and it probably has a lot of stuff that we don't need. So we'll definitely want to give it a nice purging. Also, having all these files makes it really difficult if you need to find something to find even 40 boxes. It's like that scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Would you mind, Sue, sending Sarah a Dropbox link?
Sure.
When I talked to her the other day, she needed to get one of those. And then the other thing that I was hoping we can add to the checklist for the outgoing property management team, I'm making sure I'm not speaking out of turn, is an annual calendar if they have one. Because that really sets us up for success with planning on what's coming up in the next 30, 60 days.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then I'd like to go back to the vendor setup with the ERC. Is it Jenny that continues to follow up with the vendors, or who's responsible after that initial request is given to vendors to make sure that they're fully integrated into our system?
That would be Danielle.
So Jenny sends the initial notice, and then Danielle sends follow-ups?
Yeah, generally it happens during the invoice payment process. Invoices come in, and we notice that somebody is not ERC complied. We don't not pay them, but we do make sure that ERC is aware that they are a vendor, and then ERC will start to. We set them up in ERC, and then ERC will start to send them communications.
Okay.
So. Just as far as ERC is concerned, the board, they can always opt out of ERC. Sometimes we take on an association and they have a mom and pop vendor, maybe doing janitorial, been doing it for years, and it's not what we recommend. But the board may decide, hey, they don't need to be certified. We've been working with them for years. They're not looking to take on more business with Collins Management. The advantage of being an ERC is that now a vendor can work at any of our communities. You get certified once per year, and you can work anywhere. But some vendors don't want to. They're just doing this as a little side job, and the board is fine with it. and they've been doing it for years. And then it's just a waiver that we ask the board to sign, granting them a variance from ERC. And the reason you might do that is because ERC requires certain levels of insurance that can be expensive. And also there's a fee with ERC as well.
Okay. And then at what point are vendors added to Condo Manager to be able to have work orders sent to them? Is that after they've been approved through the ERC, or the process is separate?
I don't know offhand. We have a basic vendor list that gets imported into new associations. And that list, I believe, is from ERC. So if a new vendor, so if the manager is aware of a different vendor that's not already in that list, they send a communication to the accounting department asking that vendor be added. And then at that point, my understanding is that if they're not in ERC, that Danielle will reach out to ERC and say, hey, this is a new vendor. She'll go ahead and add the vendor, but that's when she adds them to ERC. So it may be during the receiving an invoice, or it may be by request of the manager that triggers Danielle to get ERC involved.
With regards to the membership list, how are we getting information about if each member is electing for electronic communication versus individual notice, and the same goes for opting in or out of the membership list?
Okay, hold on.
Go ahead.
Everybody's automatically opted out of the email list. That's the default setting.
Okay.
So even if an outgoing management company says they've opted in, we opt everybody out, and you have to proactively opt in order to opt in. As far as your other question, I would say almost every case we do not get any. And so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in almost every case we do not get any written evidence that somebody has opted in to receiving to agreeing to electronic document delivery. So we assume that they have not.
Okay.
We can still
That's
email
correct.
them stuff. We can still email them stuff. However, if we still have to send them in paper as well. The initial introductory newsletter is going to ask people to opt in to electronic document delivery.
Okay.
So we're pretty aggressive in that in the immediate. And then also, if you go to the web portal, the homeowner page on our website, not the password protected section, but just the homeowner page, homeowners can sign up for electronic document delivery there as well. Even if you don't do that, we still like to email as much as possible, but we just have to mail things as well. If we did get a stack of document delivery agreements from the outgoing management company, we would, if that came to my attention, I would instruct the Novas to go ahead and use those and assume that they're still valid. But generally we don't. Usually it's just starting from scratch with that. And so but we send out that communication quite often. We try to make it as easy as possible for people to agree to that. And yeah, the in that intro letter, we also include a owner tenant info sheet so that people can update any contact information that they have. And in that as well, they can opt in to sharing their email address with the mailing list. But again, if they don't opt in, we're going to assume that it's not. Another thing, Savannah will, in most cases, set up the web portal. I contact Condo Manager and say, hey, I set up a web portal for this association. And then Savannah will, populate it with as many documents as we have access to, which usually includes the governing documents, the minutes, newsletters, things like that. And then in the intro newsletter, we send out, say, hey, be on the lookout for an invite from Condo Manager. And so after the intro letter goes out, then we send an invite directly from the web portal process. Again, we're not going to do this through Captain's Code, not initially anyways, because the web portal doesn't have the utility because we're not doing the accounting. So yeah, homeowners can download docs and they can do other things. But my understanding is Captain Code kind of has their own website. We also don't do the financial management. There's some back and forth that maybe we will do the web portal, but we don't know yet. I think that it would only make perfect sense if we took over the accounting, and maybe at some point we will take over the accounting for that association.
And those documents that Savannah uploads, do they have to go to the web upload folder, or does she go into the Y and Z drive and pick the documents as needed?
If you're a manager and you want things uploaded to the web portal, you put it into that upload folder. But for her, I believe she just goes in herself and figures it out. That upload folder is for her. That's where she goes every day to see if there's anything that needs to be uploaded. But if she's the one doing the uploading, especially for the initial upload, my understanding is that she goes and looks for and finds them and then uploads them.
Okay, yeah, that was my question about the initial upload. So it doesn't need to be put in that particular folder. Okay.
All right, and I would say that's a pretty detailed recap of our onboarding process.
I have another question. You had only provided one thing that had a time associated with it during the first week, scheduling the intro newsletter, and then the first month doing the site inspection. Are these other tasks, do they have deadlines or suggested deadlines, or is it just kind of get it done within the first month?
No, for some there's deadlines.
So they are.
And we'll share, if you look at the and we'll share with you the spreadsheet, the tracking spreadsheet. There's that. We also have a project timeline that was created, which kind of shows different tasks in the form of a project management spreadsheet with the time bars. We have that. I also have a narrative that kind of describes the onboarding process that I can provide to you as well.
Okay.
So all of this, including the setup forms, and most of this is you can find this. There's under the Y drive. There's a folder called Transition and Management, and that's where you can find all of this stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we can chit chat a little bit.